All right. Good morning, everyone. All right. I'm going to call this governing board meeting to order. The date is Thursday, December 21st. The time is 9:03 a.m. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Governing Board. We have board members participating in person at our office in Fresno, in Bakersfield, and Modesto. We will do our best to facilitate a smooth meeting with public participation in person and via Zoom. Before we begin, here are some important guidelines and general instructions for the meeting. Please silence your other communication devices, such as your cell phone, to avoid interruptions to the meeting. During the meeting, all public participation on Zoom will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. For public participants on Zoom wishing to make public comment, your audio will be unmuted by the host once you are recognized to make a comment during the public commenting periods. So we'll move on to item 2. Roll call, please.
Good morning. Mr. Bessinger.
Here.
Mr. Couch.
Here.
Ms. Escutia-Brayton.
Here.
Ms. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mr. Mendez.
Here.
Dr. Pacheco Warner. Mr. Pereira. Mr. Preciado.
Here.
Mr. Reyna. Mr. Rickman.
Here.
Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Sheriff.
Right here.
Ms. Shuklian. Mr. Chiesa.
I am here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
That's fantastic. Good timing, Dr. Sheriff. So, if everyone could please stand, I'm going to ask Vice Chair Lewis to lead us in the pledge.
Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. It's always nice when you have younger folks in the audience. The pledge is always a little louder. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. We have some young individuals here today that we're going to be honoring, which is great. And you're going to get to sit through, all of you guys, a short address by the chairman when we talk about what's happened in the last year. So, and it will be short. And I ask that the board members not heckle me during this presentation. So on to item 4. As my first full year as chair of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District comes to a close, it has truly been an honor to serve our constituents in this role and work with this amazing board and staff. I'm extremely proud that over the past year, we took tremendous steps to move forward the district's public health clean air mission. From everything to working with agriculture and our industries that continue reducing air pollution, to working at the community level to understand and address residents' concerns, to working with our partner cities, counties, and other agencies across the valley. I can tell you that the level of effort and partnership that we have worked to develop over the past year to better serve our communities is the highest it's ever been. And that is so critical to our ability to continue moving forward our clean air mission. These efforts included the adoption of numerous new innovative clean air measures that continue to transition industry sources to the latest and greatest emission control practices, such as the comprehensive award-winning residential wood smoke reduction program, new measures in the oil and gas sector, and ongoing efforts with Valley Agriculture to complete the Valley's transition away from the traditional practice of open burning. Additionally, this district continues to implement a wide range of incentive programs available to our communities, Valley public agencies, agriculture, and businesses. Fighting hard to bring state and federal funds to our region, these hundreds of millions in funding is used to partner together on clean air projects for new vehicles, equipment, technologies, and practices. Just last month, as a tremendous source of pride for this region, we celebrated a major milestone with our partners from CARB, federal EPA, the USDA, NRCS, and most importantly, Valley Agriculture, with respect to the replacement of agricultural tractors and other equipment. Additionally, over the past year, this district has worked more closely than ever with our communities through the AB 617 and other community-focused initiatives, with major recent successes such as the $1 million grant that the district just received in partnership with the numerous community-based organizations. Through these efforts, the Valley's air quality continues to improve. While air pollution is at its lowest levels ever and progress is significant, we still have a difficult air quality challenge in front of us due to the unique challenges, and our work continues. In the coming years, continuing to move forward with new clean air initiatives will require working even harder to build partnerships at every level with residents, businesses, community advocates, and other stakeholders. There is much work to be done in the coming year, and I have to thank the board for their camaraderie, friendship, and dedication to this important task at hand. It has been fun to see the newer board members so quickly transition onto the board over the past year and already play such important roles. And a big thank you from the chair to the board members. I am confident with the board's strong and wise leadership, and with Samir at the helm and this great team that we have, we will continue our tradition of excellent public service in the coming year. I'd like to wish everyone a happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, and a very happy and healthy New Year. Thank you.
Now Amy's going to lead us in swearing.
No. Okay. So on to item 5, which is the election of the 2024 officers.
Through the chair, if I could just add for the record, Mr. Reyna and Ms. Shiklian are in attendance now.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. All right, on to item
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Just a quick introductory presentation on this item. So every year the board goes through the process of electing its chair and vice chair, and part of that policy that the board adopted for this process involved having an ad hoc subcommittee formed to consider nominations and bring them back to the larger board for action. In October 19th, the board subcommittee did meet, and I wanted to acknowledge and appreciate Supervisors Couch, Councilmember Lewis, Supervisor Mendez, Dr. Pacheco-Warner, Supervisor Pereira, and Councilmember Reyna they were the ones that were appointed to that subcommittee on October 19th. I'm sorry, they met on December 7th. They were appointed on October 19th. And there are nominations that are in the package. They consist of nominating Supervisor Vito Chiesa to once again serve as chair, and Councilmember Deborah Lewis to once again serve as vice chair for 2024. Under the policy, there is an ability for each of these roles to serve 2 one-year terms. And so consistent with that and consistent with the subcommittee's recommendations, that is before the board for action and consideration. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair and board members, for discussion on the item.
All right, back to the board. Any comments from anyone? All right, Dr. Sheriff?
Yeah, you have to
You're-
search for it.
Somewhere in the undergrowth here.
Yeah.
I certainly want to thank the ad hoc committee for their great work, and I would like to move approval of their recommendation.
I would second that.
So we have a motion and a second.
We need to call for public comments.
Okay, open it up for public comment.
Are there any public comments in the South?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, and there are no comments online.
I specifically told my wife not to call in because she was going to call in.
Don't do it.
Very good. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Okay. Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
Mrs. Escucha Brayton,
Aye.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. McCauley,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff,
Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Ms. Shiklian,
I think that was an aye. Aye.
Mr. Chiesa,
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
And again, to the board, thank you for having confidence in the vice chair and myself to lead this organization for another year. It's very much appreciated. Okay, we're going to move on to item 6, which is the best part of our whole meeting, and that's recognition of the 2026 Kids Calendar winners. Jamie.
Thank you. My name is Jamie Holt, and I'm the Chief Communications Officer here at the district. And you all should either have a calendar right in front of you, or thank you to Maricela, who is passing one out here in Central, because I forgot. All right, the district's annual Healthy Air Living Calendar is a bilingual outreach piece that we have been producing since 1999. This is the original one that we produced in 1999. And this, of course, is this year's calendar. Throughout the year, the district encourages children throughout the valley to submit their artwork, sharing their clean air messages. We often see teachers excited about the contest and submitting entries from entire classrooms. A committee of district staff then picks the 14 winners. Yep, we do 2 Januaries in our calendar and a cover artist to showcase each year in the printed calendar. The entries are picked based on a cross-section of age, location of where the kids live or go to school, their messages, and of course, their artistic talent. The district graphically designs the piece in-house and then prints 20,000 of these calendars to distribute for free valley-wide. We focus on our healthier living schools for distribution, but also make a point to put them out in public spaces such as libraries, senior centers, community centers, municipal buildings, and of course, upon request from Valley residents. Last year, we started a tradition of inviting the winners into the district offices. I think it was maybe Samir's idea that we do this, which is a great idea. To congratulate the winners, give them their prize package that includes district materials, a Healthier Living Heroes t-shirt, which Heather is demonstrating. It's that t-shirt that we have that has the lungs on it that I think many of you have seen, and a, quote, scholarship check. We give $500 to the cover artist, and all other winners get a $100 check. Be aware that we're very conscientious about children's privacy. So in some cases, you will not see a photo of the child or may not use their last name or the school they're from. And that's really per the parent request. We're really sensitive to that. Now I'd like to recognize the winners. I'm going to start with those winners that could not make it to the district office today. We have Delmira Rubio, our April artist, who is an 11th grader from Edison High School in Stockton. We have Marley Roman, our May artist, who's a 10th grader from Edison High School in Stockton. We have Mia, our July artist, who's a 3rd grader from Madera. We have Reagan, our January 2025 artist from Webster Elementary in Madera. We have Brighton Lane, our June artist, a 7th grader from Granite Ridge Intermediate in Clovis. We have Christina Rodriguez, our October artist, an 11th grader from Enterprise High School in Kerman, and Alexander Pena Nunez, our November artist, a 4th grader from Tipton Elementary in Tipton. And that cute little baby you hear is a nephew of one of our winners. Next, I'm going to read some of our attendees who are here via Zoom. First off, we have Isabel Fuentes, who's attending with her dad, Arturo Fuentes. Isabel is our February artist. She's an 8th grader from Turlock Junior High School in Turlock. Next, we have Evelyn, who's here with her mom, Amy. Evelyn is our August artist, a 7th grader from Bakersfield. And then we have Santiago Medina with his mom, Sagrario Milan. Santiago is our December artist, a 4th grader from Lee Richmond Elementary School in Hanford. They may or may not have been on Zoom. We know school is still in for some students, so we were juggling quite a bit to get kids to come here today. Next, we have a winner in our northern office who I'll ask to stand maybe in front of the podium. That's Hector Gomez with his mom, Janet Ortega, and his brother, Jesus Gomez. Hector is our September artist. He is a 1st grader from Romero Elementary in Santa Mela. And thank you, Councilmember Escutia. Good job, Hector. We're going to wave to you. Good job. Oh, you look good today. Stay right there, Hector, because we're going to take your photo in just a minute. In the southern office, we have Miguel Zapata with his mom, Jacinia Bonilla, and his dad, John Bonilla, and baby brother. Miguel is our January artist, a sixth grader from McKee Middle School in Bakersfield. And if someone in the southern office can just say a word or two so we can make your screen come really big so that we can see Miguel big.
Welcome, Miguel and family.
Yay, great job. All right.
Yeah,
so
Miguel, great job.
Good job. Stay there as well. We're going to do a photo in just a minute. Then here in Central, and I'm going to ask her to come up and stand right next to the podium, we have Cala Martinez. And if her mom and dad want to come up as well, that would be great. We have Shay Osborne and her dad, Philip Martinez. Cala is our March artist, a fourth grader from Valley Oak Elementary in Fresno. I'm going to have you take one step over, and there you go. Now you can see yourself on TV. Good job, good job. Thank you, Cala. All right, thank you. Just stand to the side just for a minute, and then we're going to do a photo. Also in the central office, we're going to do two kind of unusual things. I think on Zoom, we might have Ms. Mayfield, who is a teacher. She is a teacher at Lee Richmond Elementary in Hanford. And we want to recognize our teachers as they really have just encouraged students to participate not only in the calendar contest, but in all of our Healthier Living School activities over the past few years. Every year over the past couple of years, Ms. Mayfield has had her classroom submit calendar entries as a whole group, and we're just very grateful for all the amazing entries we received from her students. We actually had two of her students win this year, one of whom, and I'd like to call him up now with his mom and dad, is Israel Ruiz Medina. Anna can help you. Israel is here with his mom, Concepcion Ruiz, his dad, Fidencio Ruiz, his sister, Vetsada Ruiz, his other sister, Alejandra Ruiz, her husband, Daniel Ortiz, and their baby, that cute little baby that was making all the noise. Israel is our cover artist, a sixth grader from Lee Richmond Elementary in Hanford. And I would like to encourage Supervisor Chiesa and Samir Sheikh. We have what I think is always the most fun in these things, a giant check for our cover artist. Face that way. I'm going to give that to you.
This is huge.
That is huge. Can we get you on this side? Yes. There we go. Yeah. Oh, and hold on, we've got Channel 47 here as well. Yay! Congratulations. And then I would like to have all the students, Cala, if your mom and dad want to step in, and then if the governing board members would join in the regions and stand near the kids to add a fun little photo. We're going to take a few more photos. We've got them kind of behind us. Good job. We want to thank everyone, especially our students and our parents, for coming today and for participating in this great fun annual contest and project that we have. And that's all I have, and it looks like we're wrapping up photos in all the regions. Thank you.
Once again, thank you to all the students and to the parents for taking time out to come in here today and or our field offices in Bakersfield and Modesto. Appreciate you taking the time. And I think every one of us marvel at these calendars, because when you look at these pictures, we know we don't have the talent to do it, right? I couldn't draw that sun right there. Beautiful job. So we appreciate it. And mine is hanging up. Last year's calendar is hanging up in my office in Modesto. So appreciate it. Okay, on to item number 7, which is Star Employee of the Year Awards. And this will be my second favorite thing that's on the agenda today, behind handing out money to the kids.
That was my favorite. The giant check was awesome. Hi, good morning. Shanika Dixon, Director of Personnel. As you are aware, the district's STAR work culture is aimed at creating an atmosphere where we're providing exceptional customer service, demonstrating effective teamwork, maintaining a positive attitude, and showing respect for others is an essential part of each employee's job. The district reinforces STAR performance and enhances the district's STAR work culture by recognizing those employees who fully embrace and exhibit STAR attributes. So as part of those efforts, today we would like to formally acknowledge those individuals who are recognized as STAR Employees of the Year for their outstanding performance and their achievement. So you will see many of them here today. We have some Stars of the Year in our Bakersfield office, as well as Modesto. I believe there's a few individuals who are out due to the holiday and things like that, but we've asked them to join us today, so you see them here. So if they are present, I'd like to ask that they stand when they hear their name and remain standing until all names have been read. All right, let's go. We are going to start by recognizing our Bakersfield Stars of the Year. Bakersfield, if you could speak so we can see you on the screen, that's great. So we have Michelle Bartlett, Office Assistant in Administration. Eric Esposito, Air Quality Inspector and Compliance. And Jennifer Lettergerber, Air Quality Compliance Manager, also in compliance. Okay. We also have a few Stars of the Year in Modesto. James Sanders, Senior Air Quality Inspector and Compliance. Matthew Robinson, Air Quality Engineer, Permit Services. And now moving on to Fresno. Vishal Patel, Air Quality Inspector, also in compliance. Administration, we have Isabel Villa, Accounting Technician in Finance. Stephanie Ng, Program Manager, Community Strategies and Resources. Sang Lee, Programmer Analyst, Information Technology Services. Tim Van Dyne, Senior Network Systems Security Analyst, Information Technology Services. Brad Schwagel, Supervising Programmer Analyst, Information Technology Services. Zong Zhang, Air Quality Education Representative, Outreach and Communications. Tammy Howe, Executive Assistant, Operations and Program Support. Tevin Hayes, Senior Office Assistant, Operations and Program Support. Air Quality Science and Planning. Robert Gillis, Program Manager, Air Quality Analysis and Modeling. Ross Badisher, Senior Air Quality Specialist in Planning, Rules, and Technology. Sai Vang, Senior Air Quality Instrument Technician, Air Monitoring. Now in Grants and Incentives, Shamara Elkins, Air Quality Specialist. Kevin Ng, Senior Air Quality Specialist. Janine Tackett, Supervising Air Quality Specialist. And in Permit Services, Mark Montelongo, Program Manager. Jesse Garcia, Senior Air Quality Engineer. And Michael Scott, Air Quality Specialist. Congratulations and thank you for your commitment to embracing and promoting the district STAR work culture and all that you contribute to the district.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shanika. And we have great write-ups on every one of you. We know what you've been doing. We've got your Vitas here, and we can see all of the great things you're doing. So again, much appreciated. This organization is only as strong as the employees, and we have the easy job. I've said that before, making decisions, but you do the real work, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item 8, approval of the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are routine in nature, and they are usually approved by a single vote of action by the board. The public will be given an opportunity to comment on any consent items. Does any board member want to comment on any item that is on today's consent agenda? Seeing none, out to the public.
Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, and then online.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Motion to approve items 20 through 25.
We have a motion.
Second.
Motion second. All right.
Okay.
Call the
And
roll, please.
through the chair, Supervisor Pereira is also in attendance now.
Thank you.
Mr. Bessinger?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Escutia Brayton?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Pereira?
Yes.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Sheglian?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you very much. On to item number 9, which is the public comment period. Time is made available to comment on public matters within the board's jurisdiction. The items 11 through 15 on today's agenda all have separate public comment periods, so you can do it at that time. Attention is called to the fact the board is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda. So do we have any public comment?
Do we have any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment?
Yes, one moment. He is making his way to the podium now.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and Governing Board. Most of you know who I am, but my name is John Sanders, and I abandon oil wells. I also serve on the CAC in an environmental role and as an alternate to Ned Leba on the EJAG. I'd like to start by reading CARB's mission statement. It is to promote and protect public health, welfare, and ecological resources through effective reduction of air pollutants while recognizing and considering effects on the economy. While we appreciate improved air quality throughout California, we believe the board and its support staff have lost focus on the second part of CARB's mission statement. We have learned through the help of CARB and past regulations that we can operate in a more ecological friendly environment and survive as a high priority business in California under current regulations, which is the ACT. We are having a difficult time seeing through CARB's next transition, the AFC. We do not see the advancement in the technology CARB is directing us to, and the manufacturers do not believe they will be able to meet our needs by CARB's proposed deadlines. This puts us as a California business with 300 plus employees in a perplexed position. We respectfully request CARB take the following into consideration. Reconsider and reevaluate CARB's next proposed transition deadlines. Slow up, let technology catch its breath, and give it time to develop real solutions and not band-aids to just get by. This is very costly to any organization or government and considered bad strategy for long-term advancement. We attend a majority of informative webinars that CARB gratefully allows us to participate in, even though some of the facilitators believe oil and gas, people who are involved with oil and gas are evil and destroy environments. Even though that has been the things we've heard on the webinars, we still have concerning themes that are different than that. The concern is usually for a small business and agriculture. Please do not forget the large entities. We need financial help to transition just as much as the small businesses, maybe even more. Develop an algorithm for the effect of car policy on California's economy, similar to the ones you use to calculate the proposed healthcare cost savings. If done properly, you may be surprised at the size of this number, and hopefully it causes reconsideration to the second part of the mission statement. In reviewing the budget, I see that San Joaquin Valley Air District gets $49,597,100 from the current estimated actuals of DMV fees, DMV surcharges in the 23-24 budget. When medium and heavy duty truck registrations decrease, that number's going to decrease as well.
Hey, John, I need you to wrap it up if you could.
2 sentences. Please let the private sector participate in achieving these goals through competition. SpaceX and Tesla are perfect examples of this. And last of all, small and large businesses are not the only people concerned with the lack of infrastructure and remedies in implementing the current rules. Assembly Bill 585 addresses the lack of infrastructure required to achieve the climate goals on schedule. So one of the flaws I saw with AB 585 is that the oversight that reports on progress is still an internal entity of the government. I respectfully submit my comments and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments in Bakersfield?
No other public comments in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Modesto that would like to comment?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none in person, we do have some online. First up being Janet Ditskeme.
Morning, Janet.
Good morning, Chair Chiesa, board members, and staff. And thank you, Chair Chiesa, for last year's chairing, and I appreciate your courtesy throughout the year and welcome you, Chair, this coming year. 2023 officially the hottest year on record. A series of deadly heat waves and remarkable record-breaking temperatures have hit several continents this year, while unprecedented ocean heat blanketed much of the globe. Fall in the Northern Hemisphere this year was the warmest on record around the world by a large margin, according to Copernicus. November was also wetter than average across most of Europe, with Storm Sharon bringing heavy rain and floods to many regions, including Italy. As temperature crank higher into the next year, the world appears to be on track to reach 1.5 degrees of warming on a longer-term basis in the coming years. While it's worrisome, global warming is exceeding that temperature for months at a time. Scientists are particularly concerned the planet will stay above 1.5 degrees for a long term. Through 2022, Earth had warmed around 1.2 degrees, and the past few years have made it abundantly clear that the world is already feeling alarming effects of the climate crisis that many are not prepared for. Earth's temperature was off the charts this year, and scientists just confirmed what much of the planet already felt coming. 2023 will officially be the hottest year on record. The analysis from the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service found this year's global temperature will be more than 1.4 degrees Celsius, warmer than pre-industrial levels, close to the 1.5 degree threshold in the Paris Climate Agreement, and beyond which scientists say humans and ecosystems will struggle to adapt. Every month since June has been the hottest such month on record, and November piled on. The month was roughly 1.75 degrees warmer than pre-industrial levels. And 2 days soared above 2 degrees, worrying scientists about what this means for the planet in the coming years. The report comes as delegates from more than 150 countries are in Dubai for COP24, the UN's annual climate summit, where the discussion over whether to phase out planet-warming fossil fuels has been heated. The timing could not be more urgent, Brenda Azurquist, Director of Climate Science at the Union of Concerned Scientists, who is not involved with the report. Wealthy and high-emitting countries, which have contributed the most to this record-breaking year, have a greater responsibility to make a fair, fast, and funded phase out of fossil fuels to help limit the increasing extreme weather and climate impacts. And thank you for letting me to have the additional time. Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Next, we have Connie Young.
Morning, Connie.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Great. So I'm Connie Young, Fresno resident, retired registered nurse, and volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby, also known as CCL. I'd like to begin with a shout out to Jamie Holt and her communications team. You may recall that they created a video about my getting a heat pump and participating in the Burn Cleaner program. That was over 6 months ago. Yet in the last 2 weeks, almost a dozen people have told me that they recently saw the video. That's pretty effective marketing, if you ask me. Since my unofficial agenda item is climate change, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention also the Conference of Parties, Conference of the Parties, or COP28, that just concluded. Its agreement, which recommends transitioning away from fossil fuels, is a historic breakthrough. It acknowledges for the first time that we cannot maintain a livable world unless we stop burning coal, oil, and gas. Knowing what we do now about what fossil fuel emissions are doing to the climate and to our air quality, it's heartening that most of the countries in the world, including many that produce fossil fuels, now agree that we need to transition to cleaner sources of energy. One way to speed that transition will be to make it more expensive to pollute the air by burning fossil fuels. 2 bipartisan bills in Congress would do that. One is the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which I've mentioned before. It would levy a steadily rising fee on fossil fuels wherever they are extracted or imported. The collected revenue would be distributed evenly to U.S. households as a monthly carbon cashback or dividend. The other bipartisan bill is the Market Choice Act. It too would put a price on carbon pollution, but it would use the revenue to rebuild infrastructure. Burning less fossil fuel will help clean our air and improve the health of Valley residents. These bills deserve your support. Last but not least, the Environmental Collaborative of Central California, also known as EcoCenCal, which is the organization that sponsors Earth Day Fresno, is having a holiday hike in China Creek Park in Centerville on New Year's Day from 1 to 4 p.m. Carpooling is encouraged. Come celebrate the new year by spending time in nature and with others who care about the environment. More information is available at ecocencal.org. Thank you for your service to our community this year. I wish you happy holidays and a clean and healthy air new year.
Likewise to you, Connie. Thank you.
No further comments online.
Okay, so I'm going to close the comment period, and we're going to move on to item 10, which is a report on the district Citizens Advisory Committee activities. Samir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. We were not able to have a representative of the CAC here this morning, but the packet does include a summary of their most recent meeting. Happy to take any questions if the board were to have any. But other than that, I think this can be filed away, and happy for that member to maybe answer questions at the next meeting if there were other
Okay.
interest in that.
Any questions from board members? I see none. All right. And so we're going to move on to item 11, which is receive the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And this is a good news story here.
It's not number one or two, but
it would be
it's
if there was
three.
if we didn't get the award.
Good morning, Chair and board members. So just to give you a little bit of background, the Government Financial Officers Association is a internationally recognized organization that offers guidance and support to local and state government budget and financial professionals throughout the United States and Canada. And it is my pleasure to, again, let you guys know that the district has received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which is the highest form of recognition in governmental accounting and financial reporting. And this is a representative of our annual comprehensive financial report that is submitted to the GFOA each year. And again, I'd like to brag a little bit. This is our 10th year straight receiving this award. So receiving this award, really, it represents a significant recognition by an expert independent authority of your board's commitment to meeting the highest principles of governmental reporting, transparency to the public, and excellence in exercising fiduciary responsibilities. The district's ACFR is prepared annually, like I mentioned, and has received high marks by independent auditors in the past, and we continue to look forward to receiving them as well in the future. To earn this latest award, the ACFR was judged by an impartial panel as meeting the high standards of the GFOA program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate the district's financial story and motivate the public to read the ACFR. So congratulations to your board, and thank you for your commitment to excellence and transparency to the public.
All right, any questions for Ryan? This is fantastic. We will go out for public comment.
Do we have any public comment in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none and no online comments.
This is it. There's no action required. We appreciate, and we look forward to year number 11 next year.
You got it. Thank you guys, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move on to item 12, which is accept and appropriate $59,400,000 in state funding for agricultural measures for emission reduction, the farmer program, funding for the replacement of ag equipment. Todd Young will be leading, or Samir will be leading.
No.
Todd, all right.
Mr. Chair, board members, I'd like to introduce Todd DeYoung to lead this item.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Again, Todd DeYoung, your Director of Grants and Incentives, here to present this item. As you are all aware, reducing emissions from ag sources is a key district and CARB strategy to meet federal air quality standards as an important element of CARB state implementation plan strategy for the San Joaquin Valley. Towards that end, the Valley has achieved significant emission reductions through ag off-road equipment replacements in partnership with CARB, USDA, NRCS, US EPA, as well as agricultural stakeholders throughout the Valley. In fact, this partnership has led to more than 15,500 older high-polluting pieces of agricultural equipment being replaced since the partnership was formed. This represents more than $1.8 billion in public-private investment. The most recent milestone that we've achieved was on November 29th, 2023, up in Modesto, right before our governing board study session. The district, CARB, USDA, NRCS, and the EPA signed a historic proclamation confirming that 11 tons per day of NOx, that was a commitment to accelerate the turnover of ag equipment by 2024 has been met. This was a state commitment in the district's 2018 PM 2.5 plan. This represents more than 12,800 pieces of equipment that have been replaced, of which more than 7,000 of those were the highest polluting Tier 0 equipment, which lack any sort of emission controls whatsoever. This is clearly one of our most cost-effective programs, and the emission reductions are historic there. So to support these commitments, through very strong district advocacy, back in 2017, Assembly Bill 134 and 109 authorized funding to reduce emissions from ag sources. The funding was to go towards cleaner ag harvesting equipment, heavy-duty trucks, ag pump engines, tractors, as well as zero-emission ag UTVs, or utility terrain vehicles. And this established what's called the Farmer Program. The district worked very, very closely since 2017 to develop as well as revise these Farmer Program guidelines. We're actually going through a very significant revision right now. We're working very, very closely with CARB to revise these program guidelines, and those guidelines should be approved probably by April of 2024. To date, in the first 5 funding cycles, the district has been allocated more than $543 million in Farmer Program funding. So for this year, what we're calling year 6 of the Farmer Program, we have been, the state has allocated $75 million to this critical program. It's very important to note that the early versions of the state budget for 23-24 included a $0 allocation for this program. And again, through extremely strong advocacy from this board and from the agricultural industry, a very broad coalition of industry representatives, as well as us, and you know, through this board's strong advocacy, that went from 0 to 75 million, which was a historic achievement in and of itself. And so 74.2 of that is made available to air districts statewide. 750,000 is held back for CARB administration of the program. The district of that amount was allocated $59.4 million, and that represents 80% of the total statewide funding available for the program. This slide just really shows what we've been able to achieve over the first 5 years of the program in terms of the numbers of units that we funded and the broad variety of equipment that we've been able to put into place. As you can see, it's more than 8,800 specific pieces of equipment. It's also important to note that including the incentive amounts, there's a significant cost share from the applicants. It's more than a 50% cost share. So the agricultural industry is contributing quite a bit to this program. And the total investment then represents more than $850 million over the first 5 years, just specifically with Farmer Program funding. So the district prides itself on effective program implementation, and these programs really don't work unless we have stakeholder buy-in. And to that end, we work very, very closely with growers, stakeholders, manufacturers, our Valley dealer network, industry trade groups, and other organizations to really get this program right. And we've gained a solid reputation of working collaboratively with those stakeholders and to really understand the industry and remain responsive to the needs of our applications. Just a couple examples of that: we work in very close coordination with equipment manufacturers and dealers to understand their processes. We understand build schedules and build slots. We work with individual manufacturers nationwide to try and direct more of those build slots here to the Valley to match up with our timeframes, and we've been successful at doing that. We're always looking to make improvements to our processes here. Most recently, we've launched our online application portals, which allow applicants to not only submit application materials, photographs, it also allows them to track the progress of their applications so they know what's going on with their progress with their individual projects. We're always available. We like to put a personal touch on all of our programs. We're always available by phone, in person. We routinely have walk-ins, and we'll sit as long as necessary to help the applicants fill out the paperwork and collect the necessary information to get their programs and their projects done. We're available by phone, email, and we're very responsive to our applicants. This has led to a very active application queue. We've got an active queue of more than 4,350 projects, representing more than $360 million in funding needs. So you can see that those efforts have really paid off, and there's really a buy-in from the agricultural industry in wanting to take advantage of this program. As part of your board's direction, we wanted to make sure, and we always want to make sure, that the small ag operations are provided an equitable opportunity to access these particular programs. So back in March of 2022, your board approved several enhancements, and I just wanted to remind your board of some of the things that we're doing to allow those small growers to have access to these important programs. We increased funding to 80% of the eligible costs for those smallest of ag operations, less than 100 total acres. We piloted a program, and we're still piloting a program to replace the oldest, highest polluting equipment. Sometimes a brand new piece of equipment doesn't make financial sense for some of these small organizations. So this pilot program allows them to buy very much cleaner, used Tier 3 or cleaner equipment. So it's a used equipment pilot program for those smallest ag operations. And it's worked. Since April of 2022, more than 50% of our applications that we received have come in from those smallest of agricultural operations. And we're always working with the stakeholders to make sure that we continue to have strong outreach. A lot of these smaller growers are tough to reach, so we're really working with the ag operations and the ag groups to make sure that we can target those small ag operations, and so that they have access to our programs. This is just another sort of example of what we do for small farms. This is on our website. We've got a small farm resource page, and it talks about the small farm resources that are available across a wide variety of our ag programs. Again, this is available on our website, and you can see the URL right there. Just another example of what we're doing to promote these programs with small farmers. So with that, the recommendations are before you today to accept and appropriate this $59.4 million and approve the budget resolution. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Buddy.
Todd, I want to, the reason we get the share of money that we get is because of your team. And there's just no ands, ifs, or buts about it. And being familiar with how this stuff works, I've been here 10 years now, but previous to this, I've found over the years your staff really knows their stuff. And even when we're scoping, new projects, especially your hard work on the trade up, when we worked on that, I mean, your staff really knew their stuff. They knew a lot of ins and outs, and that, I'm not going to say normal people wouldn't know, but I just have to really commend you on that. I mean, just what a great job you guys do, because this isn't easy. It's not, you have to almost understand the foreign language to know exactly how this works, but your staff is great. And this is something we really need to continue to do. And I think because we have such a growing need and so many people apply, it just shows what a great job you guys do.
Appreciate that, Supervisor.
Excellent comments. Member McCauley.
Thank you, Chair. And absolutely a huge win for the Valley. So thank you for all the work that you guys did, as well as to, I think, our Valley delegates who were very active in trying to bring this money back. My experience with this program is pretty limited. It's just talking with farmers in the area. And the only complaint I've heard is about the time it takes to process all this. And I appreciate you going through all the different steps you're taking to try to decrease that time, as well as, updates on the progression of the application. I think that's awesome. But my only question is, do we have any idea of how long the average application takes to process, whether that's a tractor or just a piece of equipment? Or
yeah, we do. We are, first of all, appreciate that. We are always looking at areas for speeding up the process and reducing the time that it takes. Given that we do have such a significant queue of applicants, it can take from the time somebody actually applies until they're completing the process. It can take upwards of a year. And we tell people that, when they're applying, and we actually work with them and we say, plan for your next fiscal year's, expenditures. And so we're very clear up front with the timeframes. And so going into this program, the applicants understand that, yeah, absolutely, we'd like to speed that up. And we are always looking for, those little incremental improvements to the program. And we're continuously looking at areas and where we can kind of speed up the process. A lot of the electronic resources that we put into place are doing that. But, from the top, that's always one of the main things that we're always looking to do is to kind of work on those efficiency gains and, cut out any areas that can slow the process down.
I have no doubt that you guys are. So thank you again for all the work on it. My other question is in regards to the 4,000 plus applicants, are those funded already or are those waiting for funding?
They're in various stages of funding. Some of those are in the funding queue right now, and then some have yet to be funded. Yeah.
Member Messenger?
Thank you, Chair. This is a really big deal to go from zero to almost $80 million, of which we're getting almost 60. This is the lobbying that needed to occur, the good work by staff, by the various political entities, counties and cities, and our partners in the ag industry. It's heartening to see this because often we think that Sacramento is tone deaf, especially when it comes to the Central Valley. And this is heartening for me to see that people, even from the metropolitan areas, see who puts food on their table and how they can improve the air and what for most of them is probably a pass-through county. So this is a really good deal, and I want to congratulate staff and everybody involved.
Thank you.
Dr. Sheriffs?
Thank you. Todd, thank you for being such an abnormal group. Good work. Keep it up. Obviously, yes, join the kudos to the district staff and the ability to collaborate and attract these dollars and to manage them so efficiently. I think it's important to remind ourselves that the bulk of this money comes from cap and trade. That's where these funds are generated, and cap and trade puts a price on carbon. And there are a number of benefits that happen from this. It incentivizes industry to find the most cost-effective way to decrease carbon emissions. There are obviously co-benefits for air quality when industry is doing this. And then we're seeing the effect. This generates significant amount of money and has been pointed out coming to the place of greatest need in terms of air quality. So back to further decrease carbon emissions, but the primary immediate benefit of those cap and trade dollars is on our air quality impacts and our ability to use that money efficiently and effectively. So again, yes, thank you for that work.
Excellent comments. Member Pereira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Todd, just doing some math here and want to get verification that one of two things is true. You said that on average it takes a grower about a year to go through this program, but we already have 4,350 projects in the query, and that totals 360 million. So if somebody signed up today, would it take them a year or closer to 7 to 8 years to get funded at current funding levels?
No, that's a great question, and I think I should be more clear, and I think Supervisor McCauley kind of touched on it a little bit. So that $360 million of funding need represents not only applicants that are already going through that process, but then applicants who have not yet been assigned funding. So it's the funding need is less than $360 million. That's kind of our total of what we have in the pipeline right now. That includes all of the funding that we currently have available, and then the funding need beyond that. So we would not expect a 7 to 8 year period of time.
And I could just add a little bit more to that. I think it's a really good question, Supervisor. The other thing, you're doing some basic math that I think is reasonable. There's a little bit more to it. There are other funding sources too. It's not just the farmer program. We use some of the DMV funds, the Moyer funds, and other funds. So depending on the budget year, the allocation will vary on ag equipment, but that overall allocation could actually be in the $150 to $200 million total annual funding in that program. So this is feeding into a larger program that also has other funding sources, and that also contributes to, so there's those allocations, those projects are allocated to not just this particular funding source, but multiple other funding sources as well.
Gotcha. So then if somebody were to sign up today, it might be in the 2 to 3 year window then, or something different than that?
Yeah, no, Todd, I think was really accurate. It's somewhere in there's a lot of other variables too, by the way. There are many growers who actually, I want to say this, it doesn't come across the wrong way here, but basically would prefer, like based on their actual financing schedule and sort of fleet schedule with, some are more accelerated than others in terms of when they want to make these orders. So when projects come in, often they'll be incomplete. And so we'll be working on that schedule, with the grower. But it is somewhere in that 12, 13 month range right now, based on where we are today, even with that high demand. Now that number, if we do continue to see an increased trend in applications and you're the $400 millionth project coming in, or the $500 million, that definitely, based on availability of funding, can become a longer period of time. And that's just a function of high demand and where you are, relative to that demand. But right now it's about 12, 13 months, actually.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. That's great news. And then the other question I have, concern I have, is several growers have gotten short-term financing to help cover the cost of getting the tractor once they've been approved. And then it's taken us more than 90 days to get them their funding after they've purchased the tractor. And so that kind of puts them in a bind of having to go out and then get additional financing in some cases until we get to them. So is there a process? I mean, is that a couple, like 2 or 3 people that happened to, and now that's not happening? Or where are we in getting the funding to the people once they've been approved and it's been allocated in their name? How long does it take them to get the check?
A lot of times that has to do with the bank.
Yeah. Another great question. And so when an applicant submits their claim for payment paperwork, there's a process obviously that we have to go through to approve that. That includes collecting additional information that may not have been included with the initial submission. I am happy to report that we have a performance standard where we like to get payment out within 60 days, and we're meeting that generally speaking. There may be a situation where we haven't been able to connect with a grower to get us some additional information. Maybe it's some paperwork on the new tractor. Maybe it's some information on the disposition of the old tractor. And so that can, extend that time out, slightly in very, very rare cases. But generally speaking, we're meeting that performance standard. We're getting folks paid within that 60-day. We understand that there are financing scenarios that we have to be mindful of. And again, we work with each individual grower to make sure that we're meeting those targets.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. When somebody tells you their scenario, generally, there's 2 sides to it. And so thanks for clarifying. I appreciate it. And thank you for the good work.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Shepley.
Oh, yes, I think we have some great incentive programs in the district. I think this is one of the best, and I was quite shocked last year when it wasn't included in the budget. So I want to thank you and everybody who's advocated for this. Again, when we have the top 3 and the 6th, right, number 6, ag producing counties in the nation in our district, and the farmers are continually being attacked for polluting the air and whatnot. This is a great program. So thank you for all the advocacy on this, and we need to continue it.
Thank you. Nice comments. And I want to kind of jump on what Dr. Sheriff has said, because we're looking for the best bang for our buck, right? If we're in charge of taking a pound of pollutants or a ton of pollutants, however you want to measure it, going after the small farmers with the tier 0 to bring them up to tier 3 or tier 4, as we've seen at our study session, what we used to pay for a ton of reductions to what in some of the programs we're paying a lot of money for a ton of reduction. And the fact that we've targeted the small farmers to try and get them to come into compliance because it was easier for my farm than it was for some of my neighbors' farms. There are a lot of conditions. I just think that's a great thing. And then to the staff, because I've been to DC with you guys, been to Sacramento, and I've seen what staff does in order to try and get this funding plus ups, and that the consolidation of we are the disadvantaged area, we have topography issues, and in some ways we think we deserve a higher percentage of the money, and we've been able to not convince people, but show them the reality is that we deserve the majority of the money. So again, thank you to staff. I think they've done just a fantastic job. Member Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. With this incentive program, whether it be for large farmers, medium, or small, are the applicants able to successfully be able to purchase equipment, or are they still lacking in funding to be able to participate and have the funding come to them to transition to their equipment?
From everything that we've seen, the program has been very successful. The incentives that we're able to offer are enough to get the growers to complete those transitions to that cleaner equipment. We have had very few, if any, that have come to us and said, the incentive isn't enough. I just can't afford the remainder of it. Although, and this is part of the reason why we did make those changes, or your board made those changes, that allowed those higher incentives for the very smallest ag operators, because we were seeing an issue with those small growers that maybe they didn't have the capital to participate in the program. And so that additional 10 or 20% that we provide to those smallest growers really made the difference. And you saw in the statistic that over 50% of our applications come from those smallest growers. So in my opinion, that's worked, and it's worked well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more board comments or questions, I'm going to go to the public. I see Mr. Isom pacing, so I know he wants to speak.
Okay. Are there any public comments in the north?
No public comments in the north.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in the south?
No public comment in the south.
Okay. Have a member of the public here to make a comment in the president's office?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Roger Isom, California Cotton Ginners and Growers Association and Western Agricultural Processors Association. Just a couple of things here. I don't think it can be overstated. This is a big deal. This is the fourth time agriculture has been challenged with meeting additional emission reductions, and every single time we've met it. And on the tractor side of it, it's the second time, and we've done it early every single time. I think that needs to be emphasized. This isn't like the truck rules or the off-road construction rules. We've done this. There's no lawsuits. Everybody's working together to get the reductions, and we get them early. In fact, the backup on this one was a mandatory rule that wouldn't have achieved the reductions until 2030. And here we are, it's, the end of 2023, and we've got them. A couple of things that I want to emphasize, though, is this isn't a full handout, right? As Todd put up there, ag has more than half the money came from ag themselves. And we have no way to pass along the cost. Mr. Chairman, you're not going to get more for your walnuts just because you bought a new tractor. Supervisor Mendez isn't going to get more for his cotton because he bought a new cotton picker. We have to absorb those costs, and the fact that ag spent much of this voluntarily on their own, I think, needs to be recognized. I want to emphasize, though, and I know that there's a lot of comments being made about the district and greenhouse gas reductions, which you really have no authority over, but you have to find ways to try to do that. And I think this is another example of where the district doesn't have the jurisdiction, but has found a way to make a difference. So with electric UTVs, electric yard trucks, somewhere down the road, electric tractors, and even the tractors that we're buying now, reduce greenhouse gas reduction emissions because of reduced fuel consumption. And I think there's going to be some real news coming out on that pretty soon from the Air Resources Board. So you're having an impact. And as one of those that walked the halls of the swing space last year with all the challenges that we faced, we know how big of a challenge it is. But the one thing I want to say is we are not going to stop. We know there's additional reductions out there. You're absolutely right. This is the best program the state or the district have on reducing emissions for the least amount of cost. And we are already actively working this next session and have already put papers together and met with some of the legislators and actually brought a couple legislators out this fall season to show them equipment, show them the benefit of it. And so even though we know it's a huge budget deficit year, this is important. I think it's been said over and over again, this is a win-win. We want to keep it going, and we have, you have our commitment to keep that process going. So again, just want to thank the district for everything and encourage you guys to accept this money and put it into motion. Thank you.
So Roger, I want to say that I know you put in an extraordinary effort along with Manuel and getting legislators to understand the program, and it's very much appreciated.
We have another public commenter coming up.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Chiesa, members of the board. Chris McLaughlin, California Cotton Ginners and Growers Association, Western Agricultural Processors Association. Want to echo the comments made by my colleague Roger Isom, as well as other comments made by board members, specifically Supervisor Mendez. This program should be commended, and it's all borne on the backs of the grant program staff. We're very appreciative of our working relationship with staff. I know I try and field as many questions with applicants when they're asking questions on how to fill everything out. I know if I get to a point that I can't answer anything, I can turn directly over to Todd and to Aaron, and I'll get a response back within the hour on how to fill it out, or direct communication with our members on how to fill something out and get their application process. So we're very appreciative of that. And even last week, I got an opportunity to go to a grower appreciation luncheon and sit with a couple small growers, and I got to specifically highlight the benefits of a program like this, and that they're targeting small growers to be applying for these programs. And so it's something I'm hoping we get a couple extra applications out of it for it. So I just want to commend the staff for it and the Air District on a monumental program and a monumental allocation again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Are there any other members of the public in the Fresno office that would like to comment? Okay, seeing none, I do have a few online. Kevin Abernathy.
Welcome, Kevin.
Well, good morning, members of the board, Chairman. I want to, again, Roger and Chris's comments, certainly echo them. Kevin Abernathy from Dairy Cares and Milk Producers Council. There's an aspect of this that I really want to hit on. Todd and Aaron do such an incredible job. It's the staff that works in the incentives team. That STAR culture, the customer service aspect of the district. I do not have one member in the dairy community that does not have high praises to talk about the people they're dealing with within the incentives program. The application process is complex. There's a lot of moving parts, and I can tell you that the overwhelming customer service aspect is the reason this program has become and continued to be so cotton picking successful. Supervisor Prairie, you're correct. Reimbursements have been a little bit of an issue, but back to the customer service aspect. Quick phone call and it's resolved. So I just want to, Roger had highlighted one aspect that I want to highlight. The thing that absolutely baffles me today is the cleanliness of the new equipment that we're replacing. And not only the cleanliness, but also for benefit of public health and the goals that we're trying to reach cumulatively in the San Joaquin Valley. I'll give you one example. On the electric feeding operations that we've done, we had one piece of equipment that had over 8,000 pounds of NOx during its duty cycle, and it was replaced with a new piece of equipment that lowered that to 311 pounds. Yes, 8,000 to 311 pounds. Absolutely phenomenal. And I really see a world that we can continue to move forward for public health and keeping folks in business with the technologies that we've got today. And hands down, great program. District gets a tremendous amount of credit for what they've been able to accomplish. And thank you so much for the customer service aspect. That's it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Next, we have Janet Dietzkeme.
Welcome back, Janet.
Thank you. I know this will be unanimously accepted, as it should be. And I thank you for including small farmers. Small farmers are a very, very important group, and helping them go to better equipment, better for the air quality is very important. This is a very unique location. As everyone knows, we're in a bowl and everything seems to come into our bowl. And during the inversion months, it is particularly difficult here. We have, and during wildfires in summer and fall, if that should unfortunately happen. Problem with climate change effects. So I'm glad that you are including small farmers. And I want to know if electrified carts, pumps, and other equipment are included in this funding. I'm not sure if they are. Thank you for the work that you have done on this. This is important, and I appreciate how hard people are working to get it. Thank you. And Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet.
Mr. Chair, board member, just a quick clarification. Electric pumps and other electric equipment are eligible under the program. Just wanted to note that for the record, and thanks to the commenter on that question.
Thank you for that clarification.
No further comments.
All right. And Member Mendez.
I'll make a motion to accept the staff's recommendation.
Second.
Oh. Member Sheckley.
We'll go duke it out.
All right. Call the roll, please.
Okay, Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Couch.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Escutia Brayton,
Hi.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. McCauley.
Yes.
Mr. Mendez,
Yes.
Mr. Pereira,
Aye.
Mr. Preciado,
Yes.
Mr. Reyna,
Yes.
Mr. Rickman,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff,
Yes.
Ms.
That was
Schick-
before Schuklien, right?
Yes.
Ms. Schicklin,
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa.
Aye.
To this chair, motion passes.
Wonderful. That's great. All right, on to item 13, which is an update on the 617 implementation and approved new incentive programs benefiting Valley communities. Jessica Olson and Todd Young will be presenting.
Yes, we will. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Jessica Olson. I'm the Director of Community Strategies and Resources. And today, along with Todd DeYoung, we're presenting an update on AB 617, as well as some new opportunities for the use of our community air protection funds. So just by way of a brief reminder, AB 617 is a statewide program, and the California Air Resources Board has gone through a process annually where they select communities, disadvantaged and low-income communities throughout the state for participation. And the Valley has had 4 selections of these communities. In year 1, we had South Central Fresno and Shafter. In year 2, Stockton, and in year 3, Arvin-Lamont. And each one of these communities in the Valley was selected to develop a community emissions reduction program, or CERP, as well as a community air monitoring program, or CAMP. There are a lot of acronyms here. And each one of these CERPs, which is developed in coordination with businesses and local residents, community-based organizations, agencies, who all sit on a steering committee, have been approved by CARB, and you can see the dates here on this chart. And each one of these CERPs is unique, developed for the community that they serve. And so you can see here, it also varies the number of measures and the number of achieved or proposed emissions reductions in each one of these. So today, I'm just going to highlight some of the accomplishments, but included in your board packet are the in-depth detailed annual reports. So just by way of process, CARB has a blueprint, which is sort of a guideline or outline of how we implement AB 617. And that blueprint requires that the district annually updates the community as well as our board on progress. One of those requirements is that by October 1st, we have an annual update on CERP implementation progress. I'm happy to report we actually meet this requirement monthly. We post monthly trackers, both in English and in Spanish, on every single measure and what progress we've made on those commitments. We also created, like I mentioned in your board packet, really in-depth highlights in English and in Spanish of our annual reports, and over the past few months have worked on them with the community steering committees. So the reports before you today also include the feedback that we've heard from those residents and community members. We, of course, then present it here today to your board, and then we'll submit it to CARB. So these are some pictures. You'll see some of these in the report. Some of these you won't, because some of them just happened a few weeks ago, of some of the community engagement efforts we've specifically done in these 4 communities. We work with community schools, especially during back to school time. We've gone to talk with parents and with teachers and with students about all the outreach and education opportunities we have through that program. We've provided incentives directly to residents. We've gone on community tours. You can see here in the upper right-hand corner, that's us in Shafter, trying to just completely understand all of the different concerns that those community members have. Community capacity building, in this case, this year, and we hope to do it in the coming year, continue to have in-person meetings where it makes sense and continue to build capacity and work with community residents in person. And then here in the bottom left-hand corner, we talked a lot about this at our study session last month, but continue to have community-centered outreach, meet community members at places they're already going, in this case at a food distribution event. So each one of these SERPs, as I mentioned, are pretty unique to each community, and they all include a variety of community investments. Some of them are really programs that the district already has, or even that the state already has. So you can see here on the left-hand side, we'll talk more about this, or Todd will in depth in a moment, but there's a list of community air protection funding or pre-approved measures in the community air protection funding guidelines. So these are all the types of measures here on the left that we've been working on for the past several years in all of these communities. The one in the center, I just really briefly want to highlight, this is all of the work that we've done in coordination with community members and with CARB and with your board to get these special projects approved for funding. This is the result of a lot of hard work, a lot of back and forth with all of the different stakeholders, and just really a testament, if you recall, if you've seen this presentation I've given the past few years, a lot of these are on the right-hand column. We've moved a lot of them to that approved column and really have been sort of a leader in the state in doing this across the board. And then here on the right, we still have a few projects we're working with that are on various stages of development in the various communities. So this is just a brief look at the progress in SERP incentives commitments. Just one thing to note, you can see that the funds obligated are certainly higher in the earlier communities. We've had a lot more time to work to implement those measures. And then, of course, Arvin-Lamont being the most recent community that had CARB approval just in October of last year. But we're certainly continuing to work with the community steering committees, work with you all, and work with the various stakeholders in moving this funding all the way to the obligated from the in progress here on the right-hand column. I just want to highlight for you briefly, like I mentioned, there's a lot of details in the reports that we've provided you, but some of the really great progress we've been able to make over this past year. Here on the left-hand side, we have entered into an agreement with the city of Shafter to provide sidewalk and bike path improvements on a really common corridor within the city, and that's a really high priority for those community members. Here in the center, this is representing 2 different contracts we have with Tree Fresno to work with the city as well as Central California Environmental Justice Network to plant trees for vegetative barriers and urban greening within that community. And then here on the right, we've talked about this a lot, but it really is a big deal to these community residents that we host events to provide free air purifiers for the SERP communities that have that as a measure. And this is an example of an in-person event we just recently went to. So I'm going to transition over to Todd, and I'll just leave you with this as we tee up the discussion about community air protection funds overall. But this funding is allowed to be spent in disadvantaged communities, both SERP selected communities and disadvantaged low income throughout our area. And so over $282 million have been spent both in the CAP funding and the match funding, so invested from other folks that are taking part in these voluntary incentives to date with all of this CAP expenditures. You can see here we've achieved over 9,000 tons total of different reductions from NOx, PM2.5, and VOCs. And you can see here on the right, this is a list of the types of projects. Just an example, there's more than this, but just some of the older polluting equipment that we've replaced with the cleanest available technologies using this funding. So I'm going to pass it to Todd to talk about some opportunities upcoming and talk to us more about the status of these funds.
Thank you, Jess. So as Jess mentioned, for the past several years, the state has provided CAP fundings towards the variety of projects that Jess was talking about, both within the SERP communities and then disadvantaged and low-income communities valley-wide. And as she mentioned, we are beholden to the state's Community Air Protection Program guidelines. It's a set of guidelines that was developed specifically for this funding source. and specifically to implement these types of projects using this funding. And so because of those guidelines, there are certain things that are pre-approved, and Jess showed it on the previous slide. There are those pre-approved project types, and then there's the project plans that we worked hard with CARB and the communities to develop specifically for the SERPs. And then there's some additional project types that are sort of enhancements to some existing programs, and I'll go through those just very briefly. And so the state guidelines require that this funding can be spent on measures that are within those adopted SERPs, so those 4 communities within the Valley. You can spend it on those measures. You can spend this funding on some of the more traditional state incentive programs like the Carl Moyer program, the Proposition 1B program. Those are generally focused on heavy duty equipment turnover. Those are sort of a lot of our core programs come from the Moyer and Prop 1B program guidelines. It does include some CAP specific enhancements. In some of these program areas, you get additional funding for some of these programs that are in these low income and disadvantaged communities, including those SERP communities. And then there were some pre-approved categories that went beyond like Carl Moyer and Prop 1B, including funding for chrome plating, and then some school programs, air filtration in schools, as well as school bus replacement. And then there's some allowance for some stationary source projects, and those are subject to that same CARB project plan approval process that Jess kind of discussed a little bit earlier. And so this year, of those CAP funds, we were allocated $64.3 million in additional CAP funds, and I'll discuss that in a future slide here. So each one of the funding allocations has a statutorily defined liquidation deadline. It's generally 4 years from the time we get the funding that it has to be liquidated. And so we're tracking that closely. CARB is tracking that closely. And it's something just to be mindful of as we work through this process with the communities and with all the stakeholders involved in these processes, that there are these statutorily defined deadlines to expend these funds. And we've made significant progress, both in funding the SERPs, the individual communities, as well as disadvantaged and low-income communities valley-wide. Made significant progress in both of those areas. And so to continue providing that sort of that valley-wide focus for disadvantaged and low-income communities, and to ensure that these funds do get spent by those statutory deadlines, we're proposing to allocate funding to 2 eligible high-demand district programs that provide significant community benefits. Now, it's important to note that this does not take away a dime from any one of the SERP community budgets. Those are fully funded with our existing funds. And so this is above and beyond what would be allocated to any one of the individual communities that has a SERP. So those SERP budgets are completely intact. So what we're proposing today, and I'll go through a little bit more detail, we're proposing to allocate $20 million to our existing zero emission school bus replacement program, for which we have a high demand, as well as sort of the companion piece to that is our charging and infrastructure program, which is necessary to support the rollout and the implementation of zero emission equipment in vehicles here in the Valley. At the same time, we're actually working with CARB right now to expand the CAP guidelines. These guidelines haven't really been touched since 2019, and we're going through a significant expansion in those guidelines right now. And what we're proposing, and we're working very, very closely with CARB to ensure that a lot of the projects that we've funded through the SERP process, the project plan process, we want to get those included in the CAP guidelines so that those can be expanded valley-wide, so that those can provide support to disadvantaged and low-income communities throughout the Valley, and not just those SERP communities. And that includes examples like our Ag Burn Alternatives program and our Low Dust Harvester program. And there's other programs that we're working with CARB to get included in the statewide CAP guidelines so that those programs can be available with this funding source to low-income and disadvantaged communities throughout the district. And as these opportunities become available, we're thinking at this point, from what we've heard, April of 2024, these guideline revisions will be complete, and we would return to your board with any particular specific allocations at that point with any of these new funding opportunities. So I'm going to go through this very briefly. We're proposing to launch a new solicitation under our existing zero emission school bus program. It provides incentive funding for replacing an existing diesel bus with a zero emission bus. We're proposing up to $20 million in existing CAP fundings in the incentive spending plan to go towards this program. I'm going to go through these very briefly. Must serve school districts within the district, obviously. It includes public schools, JPAs that provide school bus transportation, as well as private transportation providers that provide public school transportation services. Unfortunately, because of the California Constitution, we can't fund private schools, no sectarian or denominational schools. And again, that's baked into the California Constitution. We're funding the replacement of existing yellow school buses with generally battery electric school buses or other certified technology as they become available. I'm thinking hydrogen at this point. So if those become available, we would be able to fund those as well. Just some general information about the size of the bus and current CHP certifications that are necessary. The new school buses have to be the same as the one you're replacing. It's a like-for-like replacement. And again, they have to operate 100% in California and a minimum of 75% within the district. Projects would be funded on a first-come, first-served basis. We do have an existing queue of applications that we would work from, as well as opening this program up to a broader solicitation to accept new applications. Applicants have to have signed contracts before they do anything, as with all of our programs. The funding is up to 100% of the school bus, and that's based on cost effectiveness. So there's no necessary local match requirement as long as they meet those cost effectiveness criteria. And so on the charging side, again, we're proposing to launch a new solicitation for charging or fueling infrastructure that's necessary to support the deployment of all these zero emission vehicles. The program is consistent with the existing CAP guidelines, so no modifications would be necessary there. It's already an eligible project category. And the funding would be available for district-wide application. Again, this doesn't touch the CERP budgets of the 4 communities. This is available across the entire district. And so again, public and private entities would be eligible to apply, and this includes private organizations that are providing eligible infrastructure within the district in California. And so some of the covered projects are again, it's projects that are supporting the deployment of zero emission and low emission technology throughout the valley. They have to benefit a low income or disadvantaged community within the valley. It includes battery electric charging stations, so either new stations or expansion to existing stations to accommodate existing or expanded fleet vehicles in those areas. And it also includes alternative fueling stations, particularly hydrogen and natural gas fueling stations as well. And these are just some of the eligible costs. I'm not going to go through each one of these individually, but it includes the cost of design and engineering and obviously the equipment that would be installed, the installation costs, and then there are adders for on-site generation, including solar and wind power generation, which are included on this table right here. So this is just kind of a funding table, funding matrix. The baseline for projects is 60%, then there's adders for each one of the project elements that make the project more attractive. If it's publicly accessible, you get an extra 10%. Publicly accessible with wind and solar, you get up to 95%. And then for public school bus battery charging and fueling infrastructure, the program will pay up to 100% of those eligible costs. Project lives are between 3 and 15 years. And then obviously they're subject to reporting and inspections for the duration of those projects. So with that, I'm not going to read all of the recommendations here. They're before you in your packet, but I'd like to return to the board for questions and comments.
Okay, any questions? Member McCauley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a couple questions. One is in regards to AB 617 communities. And I would say, with the exception of Dr. Sheriffs, I would imagine that everybody on the board has some perspective on, what community should be the next 617 community. So can you, I guess, kind of quickly just detail to us the process of identifying and starting a new 617 community?
That's a great question. Dr. Pacheco Warner, who's ill today, by the way, and couldn't make the meeting. She serves on the CARB board, and she also has a lot of perspective on that issue because ultimately it's a CARB decision as to who gets selected under the program. What's happened with the program, in short, is that there hasn't been any increase in resources going into the AB 617 program in terms of implementation. And so while the program ramped up for a period of time, and it went from, in our case, from 2 to 3 to 4 communities, without there being any change in resources and even decreases over time, but potentially, there hasn't been statewide really. There's been a few new communities added, some that started off maybe as an air monitoring community, became a selected community, but basically the program is now transitioning from one, and Jess kind of hit on this point too, one where there were these originally kind of selected communities to one where what did we learn from that process so that we can take those best practices, take the various funding streams. You just heard Todd talk about some of the changes that are happening with the community air protection funds and apply them more broadly across low income and disadvantaged communities. So the program is not that there aren't going to be more selected perhaps in the future, but now we're going into a tough budget year. I don't see the resources necessarily going up in from an implementation point of view there. So I think what you're going to find, and this is where, I think you're hearing during the presentation today is how do we actually partner, with cities, counties, community organizations to really evaluate, what is of interest or concern to a community, what's of interest to the community, and how do we deploy some of these programs, the Clean Cars for All program, the various, there's going to be a suite of them that are available potentially to a community that we can actually just work with a similar approach, but more broadly outside of those communities. So one other thing I'll just mention is there are a number of initiatives that are going on in different parts of the Valley. There are different community organizations, and they are engaging with cities and counties. They're going through processes of understanding concerns and then communicating some of those either to us or to other agencies that may be able to play a role in helping with that. And so we are looking to position these different programs to make them. That's one of Jess's biggest roles actually, is to try to provide access to these community air protection and other funds to all communities that have, any sort of interest or any sort of an ability to identify, what they think would be of interest. So just thinking about, in Madera County, for example, and there are some existing efforts that are going on in different parts of the county. We're actually looking to position some of these programs to respond and really just grow beyond that.
More of a shift from the 617 communities to disadvantaged communities. I mean, not a complete shift, obviously, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what it sounds like I'm hearing is that there is a little bit of a shift, broadening the scope a little bit, looking at more of the disadvantaged communities instead of just the 4, 6, 7.
Yeah, and I would say it's additive. Sure. So I would say I think broadening is the great terminology, and really just we have learned a lot in the first couple of years in those 4 communities. In the last couple of years, and you heard this as well during the study session at Modesto in November, what we've been doing is really growing that outreach effort into as many communities as possible, and really just trying to respond, when there's an interest in any particular effort. Partnering, by the way, on grant applications together to bring even more resources into those communities. So that's something. It's an open invitation also to the board as you think about, if there's any opportunities within your respective jurisdictions. We're always actually looking for that because it does take partnership and it takes interest at the local level to also be able to deliver on these efforts.
And Chair, I just have one more question, if I may, in regards to the school bus replacement program, which is a great program. But when I speak with my school districts up in the mountain communities of Madera, there's some concerns that the technology is not quite there to get around. The concern that I have comes in with our procurement, though. You know, we don't typically get new things in the mountain areas. Typically, we're buying those things from Clovis or Fresno. So when we see these districts shift over to electric fleet, it's really diminishing our ability to go out and procure buses like we typically would. And so my concern is that we may be scrapping buses that really are a higher quality than the buses that we have up in those mountain communities. So is there an ability for the Air Board to really look at some of these rural school districts that have, you know, a very large geographical area to cover and have a better understanding of what their fleet looks like relative to some of these more urban districts, and then perhaps maybe devise something in which we're not scrapping buses that really are a higher quality than what's out there. We see a very similar phenomenon with our trash haulers. Again, they don't typically buy new equipment. They're getting hand-me-down equipment from the urban areas. And so again, as we see these folks shift to, you know, cleaner technology, the mountain communities really can't keep up. And so there's a huge issue that's coming down the line in which, you know, the end result is our consumers, you know, in trash, they have to pay higher rates. And then our youth in our schools who really have to, you know, reduction in services to those kids because there's a increased cost in buses that is, you know, wasn't there before. So that's kind of my concern. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's even possible to save some of those buses, do that evaluation, but that would be, I guess, my request.
Through the chair, we'll certainly look into that issue and connect with you, Supervisor. And if there's any ideas that we can come up with to better address some of the rural district issues, which certainly we hear those concerns as well. And you know, I think we'll look to maybe engage, you know, re-engage on that and see if there's ways that we can, you know, take those issues into account and come up with some solutions, perhaps to help with that. So we'll certainly take a look at that.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Sheriff.
Yes, and I would certainly endorse, the goal is cleaner, not perfection. I mean, the goal is perfection, but cleaner on the way is really what we need. You know, it was alluded to in the presentation, but I just have to, what a challenge the 617 process has been, because it is so different than what any of the districts have been involved in before. Hyper-local, bottom-up, focusing on the most disadvantaged communities, which means the most ignored communities historically. Incredibly messy. It makes getting farmers into a room and agreeing on something simple, incredibly simple by comparison, with all due respect, Roger.
Hey, watch it. I'm sitting right next to you.
Yeah, you can poke me. And done in a very short period of time. You know, boy, staff, you've been flexible, you've been innovative, you've been adaptable. I think ultimately it's worked because you've been very mission driven. You know, it's community health through air quality improvement. Bottom line, we can always turn to that and get people to agree to move forward. I think I have 3 questions. One, I really, the focus on school buses and the heavy duty fueling infrastructure, I think is very appropriate, partly because this focuses on diesel, which is the worst in terms of health. The concerns about how long is the queue going to be, and partly the question that was raised before, any preference rather than first come, first serve, well, get the oldest buses out of there first, unless we have a way of trading them to communities that are going to be able to utilize them. So that's one question about how long the queue is going to be. Second, there's a comment about near zero fuels, and I'm wondering, is that biomethane or what are we speaking about there? And then the third, a question and a comment. Boy, I want to be sure we are branding this. All those beautiful yellow school buses, they are moving billboards. I think by and large, when people see a clean air electric bus, they take pride that it's going by, that they're part of that. And particularly as the 617 is transitioning from increasing funding, more communities, to a situation where it's best practices, this is how your community can get involved, it's all the more important to get those successes out there and be sure people see it, it resonates, gives them ideas about, yes, we can be successful and where to turn for assistance. So Q, what is your near zero, and the branding issue, being sure that, you know, we shouldn't be able to see the yellow paint for the logo of the district and whatever.
Yeah, all great questions. At first, I'll address the queue. We do have a couple dozen applications in-house that we have yet to been able to fund from previous rounds of the program, but we do see that there will be room for additional applications to come in. You know, we'll go back and we'll look at what we have in the queue first. Some of those, for whatever reason, may drop out, which is normal in an incentive program. So we will have the opportunity to get quite a few new applicants in the door. In terms of oldest bus first, we do have provisions in the program that there's a certain model year cutoff, so you can't have too new of a bus that you're replacing. So we really are focusing in general on the oldest buses in the fleets, just by nature of the program. And just as an aside, as you all know, the Valley is sort of where old school buses go to die. You know, we do have one of the oldest school bus populations in the state here in the Valley, for a variety of reasons. Number one,
Only they came here and died. They just
they keep running, right? So we are, the program is certainly focused on oldest buses, and so by the function of the design of the program, that happens. Near zero does include some natural gas fueling infrastructure for low NOx natural gas, what's considered by the state to be that near zero emission technology. And your third question was branding. Yes. You would think that it would be great to put a huge banner on a school bus. Unfortunately, the CHP has very, very strict regulations about what can go on a school bus. That's why you don't see a lot of branding on school buses. But we've designed decals that fit those criteria and maximize our space on those buses. I think it's like a 12 by 12 decal is the maximum size that you can affix to a school bus for safety reasons. Obviously, you don't want a school bus completely covered, and then it becomes the yellow becomes less visible. So there are really strict guidelines, but we do, to the maximum extent possible, we do brand those school buses with our district logo and other logos.
And we'll keep looking. The other thing I just want to add on that last front, and you saw a couple of the photos of some of the publicity around, you know, the excitement when a district, you know, successfully is able to deploy some of these buses. I think we'll keep looking for opportunities to also keep highlighting some of the work that's going on, and I think that's another way to, you know, get the word out about that.
A flag, a trail vehicle, a trail vehicle or a flag on the back that's not attached. Be resourceful. All right, Member Robinson.
A couple of things. I do like Supervisor McCauley's idea in salvaging some of the older vehicles that are still compliant. But I think it kind of like your farmer program, where you're addressing some of the farmers, particularly the lower, the farmers that aren't farming much and they can't afford some of those vehicles. And so same with school districts. But just another question. So $20 million seems robust, but what's the average unit? And I know there's probably a range because we're dealing with electric vehicles, dealing with battery, maybe hydrogen. What's the range on the units?
It's great, and there is a range, but it's right around $400,000 per bus.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, $20 million is a lot, but at $400,000 a piece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Member Rickman.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. For the school bus replacement, is on page 12. it says no public monies are allowed for support of any sectarian or denomination school or any school not under the exclusive control of the officer of the public schools. Wasn't there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, a few years ago, the Supreme Court case or appellate case that says state and federal feds can give money to sectarian schools. Also, isn't this a targeting of an individual religious affiliation or expression for different treatment?
I can respond to that briefly. I don't know about the case specifically. I know that some of our programs, there's specific criteria that under certain circumstances, some of our grant programs are able to contribute to certain projects for religious institutions. With school buses, there's a specific provision in the California Constitution that deals specifically with schools in particular, as opposed to other types of religious programs. I can take a look at that again to see if, case law or, the legal authority has kind of evolved since then that might give us some potential for, looking at that again. But as I understand it, at this point in time, school funding specifically for school buses transporting students to religious schools for religious training would not qualify. But that's, I'm happy to take another look at that.
Yeah, I would like to know, you're looking at the sectarian versus non-sectarian. And at the end of the day, right, we've talked about this multiple times. We heard it multiple times about getting away from fossil fuels for school buses, for the health of our children, and so on, so it should be, I think, evenly applied across the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was thinking when Mr. McCauley was bringing up the trading a more highly polluting school bus from a smaller district from a maybe a more affluent district. I think that's a great idea. On a very limited basis, I did that when I was a chief of police. I would approach other departments and I would trade out a vehicle that frankly should not have been on the road for a vehicle with 70, 80,000 miles on it, which sounds high, but spending $3,000 to $5,000 and fixing that vehicle up and getting 3 to 4 years out of it, it's really huge for smaller entities that are challenged to keep these vehicles on the road. So if that's something that we can look into and do, I think that's awesome. Looking at the infrastructure eligible projects, obviously it says Valley's disadvantaged communities, which would be our 617, or low income communities. What does that constitute? Because you're going to have school districts like Fresno that have areas of town that are not going to qualify as a low income, but in the same district, you're going to have a handful of schools that would, and to the same extent in Clovis or other communities. What constitutes a low income community? Let me answer your question. Theoretically, only Clovis and Kingsburg in Fresno County do not qualify.
And
no, Fresno would qualify.
Yeah, but like Clovis Unified has schools in Fresno, like Pinedale and some of the other, that probably, as if you were to cut them out, they probably would qualify. So that's kind of what I'm asking for. What is a low-income community? Does it have to be a city, or if you're servicing another community?
Yeah, the city would be considered different than the Clovis Unified.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm talking specifically Clovis Unified, just because I know that that's a whole different thing. Any thought process here?
Mr. Chair, board members, so just back up a little bit. The definitions that are used, in this program in particular, but there's other state programs. there's a couple of bills that were passed, and through those bills, CARB has put out primarily through a tool called CalEnviroScreen. They've come up with definitions for both the I think it's AB 1550 and SB 535 were the two bills that kind of set up different. So there's a pretty exhaustive map, if you will, of just starting at the very top of this in terms of policy that establishes basically what census tracts qualify under these state administered kind of programs. Now, how we go about in applying that to programs like these is really where the other question is. And so definitely based on your comments, what we want to look at is making sure that for school bus projects that there's benefit, that we can show some sort of benefit to any number of these communities that are qualifying either as low income, and or disadvantaged. And by the way, the low income component of this actually expanded the original. The first maps had more to do with it was kind of a combined score of socioeconomic and environmental, and then there was an adder, the low income, and that grew the boundaries for these different communities. So that's what we'd be looking at, is whether or not the project, and I don't have a specific answer for Clovis Unified. I think we can look at that and get back to you on that. But basically, can you just show a benefit to one of those sort of eligible communities? And in the San Joaquin Valley, as you could imagine, the vast majority of the valley actually is in some way impacted or defined by that. But there could be pockets where that could be an issue. So we'll take a look at that and get back to you. If anybody has any other specific questions, we're happy to.
Yeah, specifically, I was looking at both Fresno and Clovis Unified because they have a mix of areas they serve, and I know specifically of several that Clovis Unified have and several that Fresno Unified services that, in fact, they do have part of the 617 community in Southwest, but there are going to be other areas that I think they would be able to service and be able to be eligible for this if we can look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Preciado.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. So I just have a question and comment. The question is, Prop 617 will continue to nominate cities every year, or is it going to stop soon? That's one question, because I know it is good to have a lot of funding for those areas, but when we're looking at equity, I know the intention is to get the most out for the money, but sometimes we know there's hundreds of disadvantaged communities in the Central Valley. So my concern is if we cannot reach to all of them, even though we would like to do it, but the funding, it doesn't reach to all of them. But we do have a lot of disadvantaged communities that are affected by mobile traffic, semis, buses, traffic just going along the highways, freeways. So in a lot of those communities are not getting any benefit from Prop 617. So I think our community, by example, like you mentioned before, some school buses are, throwing black smoke, diesel burning, and some of those communities are not getting any electric buses. In my area, for example, we're a higher elevation, 700, 800 feet above sea level, compared to other communities or cities in the Central Valley that are only about 200 feet. So I was told even though my county transportation for public service, they've been able to get electric buses, but those buses won't be able to go up Avenue Hills and come back to Hanford. We're looking at about 45 miles with some hills. So looks like we will not see the benefit of having an electric bus helping reduce smog in our areas. So so I think we should be looking into what other areas we can benefit those communities, like Kerman City is another example. Traffic is tremendous there, and they're still not part of 617. So there's a lot of other communities through the Fresno, Madera, Kings, Tulare, Kern area that those communities, some of them are getting benefit, but some of them are not. So how we can reach more? And I know you answered already a few questions that there are other project funding, but it seems that it's not enough. So the question is, I know the intention is good, but it's just coming, I mean, something. Oh, another big thing that happened in my city, we were able to buy a street sweeper diesel that a neighboring city was going to retire because they were able to get a brand new street sweeper. So they had 3, so they couldn't maintain 3 street sweepers. So we only have 1. So we're able to buy 1 of the 3 at a real low price and benefit from, because we couldn't afford to buy a new one. So that's the things that should happen. Like instead of retiring all buses or equipment, any kind of equipment that it has a higher pollution rate, those are the ones that should be retired, and maybe exchange some of those. Somehow we need to work on that, I believe so also. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I respond quickly? Mayor Preciado, thank you for your comments. Very important. And I want to be very clear, with the board about the community engagement efforts and what we do. And, the AB 617 communities, this board has approved plans going back a number of years, right? Funding has been allocated. We're working in those communities. You've all voted on those plans. They're in place. We're fully committed to working in those communities as per the board's, approval of those plans. What we're saying, though, is well beyond those plans. What we talked about most of this item has been, how do we grow our community engagement efforts? We talked about this also in Modesto, into any community that has an interest in engaging and, has ideas for projects, wants to understand the air quality. So we've been supporting exhaustively efforts across the valley, as you know, and even in Avenal, we brought a tune-in tune-up event right into the community. We partnered with your city to do air purifiers and number of things. The city can actually take advantage of the Drive Clean program, or the public benefit grant program, and it has been taking advantage of that. We've been offering that to any community that is interested. We've done town halls and other things in your community as well. And we're expanding that program. Now, there are rural issues, like you mentioned, with school buses, where this funding actually is available to Avenal. But if Avenal can't take advantage of this funding because of the real issues around, geography and all that, well, how do we take other ideas, to try to bring about that same change in Avenal? We're all ears. We've committed to looking at that and have no issue with that. So I want to be very clear, that, and I want to make sure there's no misunderstanding about what we talked about here, which is the valley-wide implementation of programs like the school bus, the infrastructure, and other ideas, as we keep hearing from the board, of things that we could be doing in communities where, especially when there's interest, because that's the thing, is that these are all voluntary programs. You're going to need different school districts and other partners to step up and actually, put applications in also. And you've all been great at, encouraging, that to happen. So whenever there's been interest, as there has been in Avenal, we've deployed quite a bit of resource, and we've responded, to the need, and we'll keep looking for ideas, for how to, better do that. So I just want to be very clear about what we talked about here, which is a valley-wide effort on the community engagement. And I think you've acknowledged that, but I just want to be very, transparent about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yes. I also don't want it to be any misunderstanding. I know that the intent is to do the best through the whole Central Valley, but it's just concerns from myself and other communities and other constituents that really the intent is there, but the funding is not there for everybody. So I'm not saying that the board is not trying to be fair, and also the air district staff have been very, very polite, reaching out to disadvantaged community. Far has, Bakersfield, Avenal, Mendota, Stockton, everywhere. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I just want to all know we can all help to bring ideas, suggestions, and how we can, kind of do better. I know we can do better, but funding is number one. There's no funding. There's hardly anything we can do, but I think we can all work together, and I don't want it to be any misunderstanding. I think we all been doing an incredible job, specifically staff reaching out to communities. The relationship with farmers, businesses, communities is there. they know about it, but sometimes it takes more than one time for them to realize that they need to also do their part. Reach out to through email, fill an application, or kind of reach out directly to the air district and get a hard copy, fill out the application and submit it. I think if some people don't do that, then they don't get the benefits for air purifiers or things like that. They also need to do their part, their share. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Dr. Sharris?
A question. From the discussion, we don't have an inventory of buses in the valley. Yes? No? There is no inventory of buses. We don't really know what's out there. And I wonder, is that correct, or do we?
No. I do believe there is an inventory.
Okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but there is an inventory of buses in the
All right.
Now, how up to date and accurate it is remains to be seen. I don't think it's been updated in several years, but there is an inventory out there. I don't know
I
that
guess
it
just the
reflects.
question, would it be helpful to have it updated in terms of targeting the older buses? It may or may not be cost effective, but.
Okay, I see no more comments from the board. We're going to go out to the public.
Yeah, are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none in person, we do have one online. Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah. AB 617 is a very important and imperative project because it was community driven. It was the people who are suffering most, who were identified as in need of air purification measures. And regarding that discussion, I think the board members are one of the ways that the communities can be identified that need to have AB 617 recognition. I think that would be a good thing for the board members to do, to check their communities, communicate with their communities to discover what areas are something that should be a project. Residential wood burning has been successful so far this year. Since 2 weeks in October, since then, the end of October, I've not been able to go outside. I have not been able to walk my dog until Tuesday. And I actually got to go outside. The air had been improved by rain. The approved charging infrastructure expansion is great. I'm glad to see that was involved in the approved community identified projects. And they are all critical for cleaner air. Filtering school buildings with a good air purifying equipment is very, very, very important. Clovis School District has a remarkable air purifying equipment in their classrooms. I have been in those rooms, and that is a project you can classify as successful. Battery electric school buses are so important because the diesel, when you at the end of the school day, when kids are waiting to get into their buses, the diesel fumes are overwhelming. And that is very concerning. Now, the mountain communities, yes, when the children are waiting for the buses, they're exposed to the diesel, but the air quality up there is not the same as the air quality down here in the valley. Yes, it is important that all have school buses that don't injure the children. And I appreciate this work on this. I appreciate considering the communities that are more polluted than others to be approached the AB 617 manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Our next online comment is Kevin Hamilton.
Hi, good morning, Chair and members of the board. thank you for the opportunity today to speak and for this great presentation. Just a quick question regarding especially the school bus money. EPA has also dropped quite a bit of money toward this conversion to electric school buses. I was wondering with regard to that, if the district could talk about that particular funding, and are you accessing that as part of this and leveraging it, or are you able to help schools both access this funding that you have and the EPA money? And of course, there is some bus money over at CEC as well. So maybe if you have time, you could speak to that a little bit. Other than that, thank you for doing this and creating an opportunity for these programs to be spread across so many of the disadvantaged communities of need in the Valley. I think that fits with the true spirit of AB 617. That's it. Thanks. Shortest comment from
Thank
me
you,
ever.
Kevin. And we will answer that after public comment.
No further comments online.
Okay, if staff could address Kevin's questions.
Yeah, just do a quick response. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there have been federal funds, state funds. None of those are ever enough, so we have been outreaching actually those funds to our partner school districts. The funding cycles vary, and we're not sure exactly when those funds we've actually made available to them, but we're certainly aware of those. We're outreaching them, and it's all just additive. Hopefully it's a competitive process. So we don't know exactly how much funding will actually come to the Valley, but we're supporting those projects, and we've got this funding available as well. And they're just an overwhelming number of projects, I think, as school districts keep moving forward with looking at these opportunities. So we are aware of those, and we're definitely outreaching that and looking at those.
Generally, those programs, the people are going to apply for those programs. They're not going to apply through the Air Board. Money's not going to be subvented.
I think a lot of it depends on timing, and there's procurement cycles, and those programs are typically will have we're a lot more efficient with our processes here. So my guess would be that they're sort of like taking those different timing into account, and okay, we'll apply for something now and maybe look for something down the road, as a longer term kind of an option under some of the other programs.
Great. I think there's been a die has been cast on the 80% rule. Any money coming to California, 80% comes to the Valley. The board will agree.
That's a very high expectation.
That's great.
We
Okay.
strive towards that for sure.
Any other questions for the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to accept the staff recommendation.
Motion to accept the 5 staff recommendations.
Chair, if I may, can we include direction to update that list of buses? Is that possible?
Okay. I'm gonna look. It is possible. I'm gonna ask.
Yeah, I can. Well, maybe just to be clear on that, then, because we don't actually have the. I think we can certainly look to do that and work with our state partners and see if we can make it happen. But
you should have to be able to access the DMV records.
Yeah, to the extent it's doable, we'll
feasible.
Certainly work to do that. Yeah,
that's okay with the maker of the motion. Okay, that's good. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Mayor Preciado.
Okay, Mr. Bessinger?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton? Aye. Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Schicklien?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great news. Thank you very much. On to item 14, adopt proposed amendments to the District Rule 4402, the crude oil production sumps. And Jonathan and Samir, is that, oh no. Shiraz.
Shiraz Gill, Deputy APCO.
All right.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Happy holidays. Before I go to the proposed amendments, let me just talk about the air quality challenges. As you know, we have some very unique challenges here in the San Joaquin Valley, our geography, meteorology, and topography. Because of that, we're designated as extreme non-attainment for the 8-hour ozone national air quality standard and serious non-attainment for the PM 2.5 standard. And because of that, we need substantial, significant emission reductions to meet these standards. We made a lot of progress, but because of the keep strengthening of those standards by EPA, we got a long ways to go. Stringent rules and regulations have been adopted by your board over the last 3 decades. Number of recent regulations that have been approved over the last few years, and based on that, stationary NOx emissions have been reduced by over 90%. Those are smog producing and PM 2.5 producing emissions, and air quality, as you can see from that chart, have been reduced significantly. California Air Resources Board also has the most stringent regulations in the nation, and collectively we do have, with the San Joaquin Valley rules and the state rules, the most stringent regulatory program in the nation. We have also a very strong and robust incentive program. You've heard about that today. Over $6.2 billion in public-private investment. And because of everything that we do collectively and through your board, clean air is happening every day. So why are we doing this rule amendment? You hear about the Assembly Bill 617 quite a bit. You heard about it today. We talk about investments in community. One of the other requirements of AB 617 is to conduct an expedited best available retrofit control technology review and put together an implementation schedule for facilities that are subject to CARB's cap and trade program. So in 2021, the district conducted a BARC rule analysis and found certain opportunities for our crude production oil sump rule, for Rule 4402, to align our VOC exemption threshold for produced water in ponds with other air district rules. Rule 4402 was also included as a SIP strengthening measure in our recent 2022 ozone plan. And through this entire process, actually over the last several years, with this BARC analysis, we've done an extensive public process to make sure that we're complying with BARC. So Rule 4402 is just one of the rules in a suite of rules that we have for oil and gas rules, all the way from the extraction of the oil production to storing the oil to refining the oil and transferring the oil. We have a number of rules and regulations, very stringent regulations that apply to oil and gas operations. We also coordinate very effectively with our partners at CARB that have rules in place for oil and gas, and EPA rules in place, and other agencies. So we work collectively together to make sure that we're implementing these rules as effectively as possible. So Rule 4402 was first adopted in 1991, and it was last amended in December of 2011. It applies to all first, second, third stage sumps at facilities that are producing, gathering, separating, and processing or storing crude oil in an oil field. Now, these ponds and sumps are basically storing produced water that is remaining after a lot of work has been done to the soil. Significant processing has happened, separation has happened, extraction of the soil has happened. So basically, it essentially is water with very tiny bits of oil left in it. So the purpose of this rule is to limit those VOC emissions from these sumps. The requirements prohibit the first stage sumps because that's where the majority of the emissions would be. Second or third stage sumps are required to be equipped with an intact, flexible floating cover, rigid floating cover, or a fixed roof cover that does not allow VOCs to escape. And ponds and sumps, what we're talking about today, that store this produced water that have a concentration of less than 35 milligrams per liter are currently exempt from the rule. So that's what we'll be talking about specifically today. So we compared that level, our 35 milligram per liter produced exemption threshold to other district rules. And we found that South Coast, Ventura, and San Luis Obispo, they have their exemption threshold established at 5 milligrams per liter. So we evaluated our level against those levels. And first we looked at, we did a number of analyses on cost effectiveness, looked at all the different types of control technologies that are available. And we found a number of technologies that are capable of reducing the emissions down to that 5 milligram per liter. I won't talk about each one of these technologies, but there's a number of them that are available. Yeah. So we also conducted a large inventory of the source category. We looked at what the VOC data was from these sumps. We also did a comprehensive review of the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Board records and looked at their ponds and the data associated with the VOC data from the produced water. And based on that analysis and the test data that was provided, we found that the vast majority of ponds and sumps contain VOC concentration less than 5 milligrams per liter. So based on that, the current limit is 35 milligrams, and we found that most of these folks are already at 5 milligrams per liter. So the proposed amendments are lowering the VOC exemption threshold down to that 5 milligram per liter. So this addresses our BARC and ozone SIP requirements. It also aligns the rule 4402 with other California Air District rules. There's very, very minor other changes for clarity in the rule. And based on these test results, we are not quantifying any emission reductions at this time, and no significant costs are expected from this rule proposed amendments. Any changes we make in rule, we also always look at the health benefits. As you know, exposure to ozone is linked with a variety of health impacts. I'm not going to go through each one of those, but significant reductions in emissions, help with those. District has worked with CARB and EPA to lower ozone precursor emissions throughout the valley. I showed the chart earlier with the reductions in emissions. Fugitive VOC emissions from sources like this also contain hazardous air pollutants such as benzene or other carcinogens. So further limiting VOC emissions through these proposed amendments contributes to additional public health in the valley. We conducted a very robust public process, multiple opportunities for the public to provide comment. 2 years, we started it back in 2018 with the BARC analysis. 2 workshops. We had a draft rule published in September. We had a proposed rule posted in November, and then we provided updates to our governing board meetings, Citizens Advisory Committee, and Environmental Justice Advisory Group meetings. We received no public comments to this process, although just a couple of days ago, we did receive a suggestion by EPA to continue to evaluate our small producer exemption. So recommendations are to adopt the proposed amendments to Rule 4402 and authorize your chair to sign the attached resolution. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Member Mendez.
Yeah, I think this is when I ask a series of questions, but I think this thing's good. When I first seen this, I've farmed around and lived around active oil fields all my life. And when I seen this open, how you would bid it, the item, my reaction was WTF, because I have not seen an open pit in years.
I don't understand what that is.
Yeah.
Come on.
So what's the percentage in the total production is that there is actually an open pit? Because what I'm used to is, and I don't know if the board understands, when you're producing oil in a lot of fields, especially your older fields, and just in general, you get 10 gallons of water for every gallon of oil, roughly. It's usually a salt water type water. But what's the percentage of open pits? Because all I see is tanks.
Yeah.
Water tanks.
It's actually a very good question. Over the last several decades, a lot of facilities have actually installed storage tanks.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of these open pits have been replaced with these storage tanks, which are generally well controlled. But we do have a small number of these pits available, and they may be very small in size. There are some that are larger. But again, when we're talking about this produced water, and the reason why we have this exemption level at this concentration is because it's primarily water, right?
Right.
So you have very, very, very low concentrations of this, VOC, but because of the ultra low concentration, we exempt those ponds, right? So the number is fairly small.
So probably maybe 5% or less?
Based on tanks, the amount of tanks that are out there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. Less than that.
So this is a very small deal that needs to be taken care of.
Right. It's a small category of emissions.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to go out for public comment.
Do we have any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Wow.
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
Wasn't paid to make the comment.
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, and there are no online comments.
Okay, bring it back to the board for action.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Second, Messenger. Roll call.
Okay, Mr. Bessinger,
Yes.
Mr. Couch,
Yes.
thank you. Ms. Escutia Brayton? Aye. Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Preciado?
Yes.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Shecklian?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
Thank you very much. On to item 15, adopt proposed Rule 3172, the federally mandated ozone non-attainment fee for the 2008 8-hour standard.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
He's working his computer, and I thought he was presenting.
No, I'll be handling this one this morning. Morgan Lambert, one of the Deputy Air Pollution Control Officers here at the district. As your board is well aware, there are many different mandates that come out of the Federal Clean Air Act. And one of those mandates are the so-called Section 185 non-attainment penalty fees. And what the Clean Air Act requires is that certain ozone non-attainment areas adopt rules which require the assessment of a fee intended as a penalty in the event that the area misses an applicable ozone attainment date for a standard. And these fees only apply to so-called major sources of NOx and VOC, stationary NOx and VOC sources in extreme or severe non-attainment areas. And if triggered, these fees are required on an annual basis until that area reaches attainment for that applicable ozone standard. Before you today are the proposed fee rules to address this Section 185 requirement for the 2008 and 2015 8-hour ozone standards. The district is currently classified as extreme non-attainment for both of these standards. Your board has adopted plans to address bringing the valley into attainment with these standards. The 2016 ozone plan contained the strategies for attainment of the 2008 ozone standard by the applicable 2032 attainment date. And likewise, the 2022 ozone plan had those same strategies for the 2015 standard by the applicable 2038 attainment date for that standard. I will note that significant progress has been made in reducing ozone concentrations and attaining these standards and bringing forth the emission reductions that were in the commitments with those plans. However, as you can see by the time, there's still a lot of time to go before we'll actually know for sure the success of those planning efforts. Just as a quick backdrop, there are currently 4 ozone standards, which the district is in stages of complying with. And likewise, there will be, after today's action, if the board chooses to approve, 4 different Section 185 fee rules. The proposed actions today are the ones in green below, the 3172 and 3173. Prior to this, your board has taken action to adopt 3170 for the 1-hour ozone standard and 3171 for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard. So a quick overview of the proposed rule. These rules will fully satisfy the Federal Clean Air Act requirements by collecting the non-attainment penalty fees if the district fails to reach the attainment of the 2008 or 2015 ozone standard. Once again, although these rules are required to go into in place early, they're only triggered if the EPA finds that we fail to attain those standards. And if triggered, they require an ongoing annual fee from the major stationary sources if for any emissions or any actual emissions over 80% of their baseline actual emissions. So what that basically means is at the time, the year in which that attainment deadline is, we look at the actual emissions inventory for all of those major sources of NOx and VOC, and in subsequent years, for any emissions over 80% that they have of that initial baseline, they're required to pay a fee. So in basically just that increment during that time period, they would be required. By adopting these fees or these rules, we avoid collection of these fees by the EPA, where the funds would go back into the general U.S. Treasury and may not be directly benefit the valley. So Whether or not a local agency actually adopts these fees, the fees will be collected. It'll just be that the EPA collects those fees. And so the board has always seen fit to fulfill these mandates and make sure that in the event that these fees it's a necessity to collect these fees, that those fees can then be utilized here within the Valley to benefit the Valley. In terms of rulemaking process, this is really an ongoing effort and tagged on to the end of the process for the rule for the 97 standard, which was 3171, which your board adopted a few months back. We had these rules posted for public review and comment back in October. We held a workshop in late October. We published the final rules in November and had discussed these rules at various meetings, permanent stakeholder meetings, citizens advisory committee meetings, and provided ongoing opportunities for the public throughout this process to provide input. There were no comments that we've received to date on the proposed rules at any time during the rulemaking process. And with that, we're here today to recommend the board adopt Rule 3172 and Rule 3173, as well as authorize the chair to sign the attached resolution and submit these forward to our EPA. So with that, I'll return it to your board for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Member Bessinger.
Thank you. What would be an example of major stationary sources?
Yeah. That's a great question. So for NOx sources, that's generally the type of sources that would have large combustion equipment. It could be power plants. It could be facilities that have large industrial boilers or other types of equipment. On the VOC side, oftentimes you're talking about oil and gas operations, other types of facilities that may have volatile organic compounds. It could be landfills. It could be composting operations. There's a whole host of things that could fall into those.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none at this moment, we'll go out to public comment.
Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield?
Thank you. Any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none. I do have one online comment. Janet Dietz-Kamay.
Thank you. I just want to point out that in the summer months, in the afternoons when the ozone levels are high, I cannot go outside, and I'm sure there are others who are unable to breathe when the ozone is high. And it's really an important thing to find ways to reduce that ozone in the summer months. I'm amazed when I see people out running in high ozone levels. It's something that I simply can't do. I would pass out. That is absolutely, I would pass out, because one time when I was out in there, I almost did, and how I managed to stay, I guess, adrenaline. So I just want to point out that to some of us, high ozone levels are very, very dangerous. Those of us who have asthma and respiratory diseases. And that's my comment. And I just hope that it is understood that there are some of us who are seriously affected by high ozone levels. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
No further comments.
All right. Will of the board.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
Vice Chair Lewis.
Okay, roll call, Mr. Bessinger?
Yes.
Mr. Couch?
Yes.
Ms. Escutia Brayton?
Aye.
Ms. Lewis? Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Preciado?
Aye.
Mr. Reyna?
Yes.
Mr. Rickman?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Sheriff?
Yes.
Ms. Schicklien?
Aye.
Mr. Chiesa?
Aye.
Through the chair, motion passes.
That is fantastic. Okay, we're going to move on to a verbal report from the California Air Resources Board, but Because Dr. Pacheco Warner isn't here. Do you have?
Yeah, I could just make a quick, the summary is in your package. I just wanted to note, there is one thing in the package that I wanted to highlight, which was the CARB approval of the funding plan for what's called Clean Transportation Incentives. And the reason I highlighted it is because it's a $624 million funding plan. 140 million of that is what's called community-facing programs. A big part of that program is the Clean Cars for All program. That's the program that we use we couple that with the Tune and Tune-Up program, and this board has been really active in pushing the state to have a large allocation going into that program, and it benefits a lot of our communities. So just want to highlight that the board did approve that program, and Dr. Pacheco Warner, was really active in trying to make sure that these district programs, got good allocation under that process. I just wanted to note that on behalf of Dr. Pacheco Warner, and happy to take any questions. I give it a shot in terms of answering them, but that'll conclude that item, Mr. Chair.
Big thank you to Dr. Pacheco Warner for her advocacy for the San Joaquin Valley. Thank you. Move right into your next report, the Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to start off by thanking you, Mr. Chair, and Council Member Escutia Brayton and the entire board for all of your work and support for the Clean Air Ag Equipment press event in November. That was a really highly attended and highly acclaimed, well-covered event. And the meeting itself, the two-day meeting, was a very productive meeting. A lot of great discussion, great items. Really appreciate all the board's support and work on that. I wanted to also mention that yesterday EPA did approve, and it's published in the Federal Register, a series of actions related to PM 2.5 contingency. This is the issue that was related to the potential highway sanctions, and it took, again, a lot of hard work by the board to work with EPA and come up with actually the first of its kind in the country package that has now been proposed to be approved by EPA. As part of that, they also stayed and halted the potential sanctions related to this issue. Again, the Valley's the first out the gate on a changing set of policies on that issue, and so we were able to pull that plan together, and now EPA has proposed approval, and so there's some positive news on that front. Kids calendars are available in all offices for board members and the public to take, so please, before you leave, and if you could grab some of those and please share them with your constituents and others, that would be very much appreciated. I'll just, one last thing call up, got a couple of slides to share with you on at year end here, going into the holiday season. Wanted to share a few of the efforts that are going on by the staff in continuing to serve our community through charitable work as well. And I just wanted to highlight some of these efforts for the board and the public. Various initiatives that we've been involved in across the regions to, again, give back to our community and be there. There's a food initiative, Greater Stanislaus County, did a food and personal care drive there in the Modesto area, Keep Bakersfield Beautiful, and a beautification effort there in the current area. The Golden Empire Gleaners, this food drive down again in Bakersfield. There's a large set of number of children that needed some help in getting gifts during the holiday season here. So we're actually able to donate 60 different or sponsor 60 different children through the Holiday Giving Tree program, and then there's a blanket drive that's going on right now here in the Fresno area as well. Just wanted to highlight some of that work and the just the great levels of participation that we see here and giving back to our community. And with that, I just wanted to wish the entire board and the public a happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, and I hope you're all looking forward to some great time with your friends and family going into the season here. And with that, Mr. Chair, turn it back to you and the board.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Samir? Okay, so I'll move on to the next item, and which are board comments. Member Robinson.
I just want to once again congratulate the student artists. Lee Richmond School is only a few blocks away from my house. And so definitely congratulations to Israel Ruiz Medina. He was the winner, but also Santiago Medina. And so hopefully we'll get to see them in my chambers in Hanford. So anyway, congratulations. Good job to the school district.
Pretty nice comment. Thank you. And not seeing any other board comments. You're pushing? Go.
Okay,
Vice Chair,
thank you. First, I'd like to thank all of our staff for making our job so easy up here and the effortless and smooth way that this operation goes. To all of our star employees who were awarded today. Well, actually, the awards that we saw at our retreat, but again, here for the public to acknowledge them as well. Thank you all so much for making this operation run smoothly. And when I hear the comments from the public and even people who are coming to express concerns for their organization, there's still that component of how well our staff works with them. So thank you all for what you do. You make our lives easier up here. I also want to make a comment about the calendar. It's a wonderful calendar again this year. It's the second one I've received because it's the second year that I've been coming to the chambers here. But for the students who submitted and didn't get an award, thank you to them as well for taking the effort to reach out and just give your thoughts and concerns about air quality in our community and in our valley. And last but not least, I want to thank the committee and the members of the board for voting me in again this year as vice chair to serve. It certainly is an honor and a pleasure. And when the chairman's not here, I'm happy to serve in his stead to take over the meetings. And I just want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and be safe out there in the community. Thank you.
Perfect. Member Rickman.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say congratulations to you both, Councilmember Lewis and the chairman, for being back in your position. You guys do an excellent job. And, I won't miss the phone calls, text messages, and the door hangers by our chairman for re-election for this position. But you had my vote in the very beginning, man, so congratulations. But I also want to say a Merry Christmas to everyone. Have a great New Year, and thank you to all our staff, and God bless y'all.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I just want to go back really quickly to our study session, because I continue to be impressed with the caliber of folks we brought in. And, it's an opportunity to celebrate our successes, but those are always short-lived because there's a daunting task in front of us all the time. You meet an ozone standard, you move on. But the exchange of ideas with folks who are regulators, listening from people on the ground, because we had the public there talking about the realities of what's on the ground. It's a good exchange of ideas. It's not adversarial. It's just people sharing knowledge of what programs might work, and it makes this board more successful. So I want to thank staff for getting the right people there. That was excellent. And the same thing as Vice Chair Lewis said, thank you very much for allowing me to serve one more year. And I want to wish everyone a very, very, very happy, healthy number one, new year and holiday season with you and your family. Okay, we're moving on. We do have closed session.
Yes, sir. We have two closed session items as listed on the agenda. One is pending litigation, the district versus Agland joint venture, pending in Fresno County Superior Court. And then we also have the item of the public employee performance evaluations of the executive director, APCO, and the district council. That would be me. And we do need to see if there's any public comment on either of those items.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on the closed session items in Bakersfield?
No members of the public in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on this item in Modesto?
No public comment in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none and no online comments.
Do we expect
So we
a
will
report
move
out?
into closed session and then we will adjourn thereafter.
And do we expect a report out?
No.